Hey there everybody, Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of our History of shows. Today, after a long wait, I know everybody's been kind of holding out and being patient for this one, including myself. Today we're going to talk about the history of Southern rock. Okay, a subgenre of rock and roll that quite frankly I've been listening to practically my entire life. And there's a ton of bands that I love in the Southern rock genre, but more importantly, wanted to talk a little bit about kind of how this genre came about, how it flourished, the kind of ups and downs, and more importantly too, or equally as importantly I should say, a lot of the kind of notorious bands of the genre, a lot of the more famous bands in the genre, and hopefully you'll hear about some groups that maybe you've never listened to before, right? Because that's kind of the goal of a show like this, is to talk about the genre itself, many of the great albums and songs and bands and so on and so forth. So when did it all kind of begin? Well, it's kind of hard to pinpoint the beginnings of Southern rock, but you talk to a lot of people, you read a lot of books and things like articles and things like that, and Southern rock, kind of the genesis of the sound, actually didn't start in the South. All right, you had in like the late 60s, you had bands like Creedence Clearwater Revival and Canned Heat and the Flying Burrito Brothers, the Byrds, Graham Parsons, the Band, all these groups that were, not from the South, what they were doing was they were mixing kind of like rock and pop and country, real like kind of rootsy music, and creating this kind of new sound that it wasn't Southern yet, right? But it was a very rootsy type of rock and roll, kind of folk based, kind of country based, a little bit of rock, a little bit of blues, maybe touches of jazz here and there. But it wasn't until a little band from Macon, Georgia, named the Allman Brothers Band, okay, who debuted back in 1969, who started to take kind of all that, as a big spider crawls up my leg, started to take that sound that kind of begun by some of these other bands in the rock genre, but from other parts of the country, and started to inject their own personality into the music. They're from down south, so again, country and western, all right, folk, all popular down south, but the blues especially was really popular in the South. So here you had the Allman Brothers Band, okay, led by the two brothers, Gregg and Dwayne on guitar. Well, both played guitars. Gregg played keyboards, specifically Hammond organ and piano, and he sang. Who, they're growing up, their family, where they lived, rooted in the blues, okay? And the same thing, with Dickey Betts, the other guitar player, J-Mo, Derek Trucks, okay, Barry Oakley on bass, all right? All these guys grew up down in that area where all this kind of like homegrown music was percolating. So, the Allman Brothers Band, started off, they weren't an immediate success. They took them a couple years to kind of really get going. They released their debut album in 1969, their sophomore album, Model Wild South, a year later. Those albums had a bit of a cult following, not big sellers though. They were on a major label. Okay, I do want to mention a lot of the bands we're going to be talking about, especially early on here in this show, all signed to Capricorn Records. Capricorn Records was like the label that housed a roster of mostly Southern rock bands. Okay, so a lot of these albums we're going to be talking about were on Capricorn. So here you had the Allman Brothers, released a couple studio albums in about a year, but they were really starting to make a name for themselves on the road. It wasn't until Bill Graham really started to fall in love with the music of the band, and their live performances started to really push them at both the Fillmore West and the Fillmore East. So fast forward to 1971, and the band plays a historic couple sets at the Fillmore East, and that becomes the basis for the At Fillmore East double live album, which, as we know it now, all these years later, one of the greatest live albums of all time in the history of rock and roll. And that basically catapulted the band to superstardom. All right, that's what kind of did it all. But of course, as all this is happening, right, as it was the case with a lot of young groups back in the day, drugs and alcohol, pressures of the road, the excesses of the road, the temptations of the road, running rampant. You got half the band, if not more, all having serious drug problems, burning out on the road. Okay, so band gets ready to go record their Eat a Peach follow-up studio album. They're sending Duane off to rehab. They're recording the album. They're having a break all the time, because Duane's going to rehab. I think Barry Oakley was also going to rehab. They all had their own issues they were dealing with. Duane comes out of rehab. They go back into the studio, start working on some more stuff. But one day he's riding his bicycle on the highway, I guess, I don't know, coming to or from his house or whatever it might be. And he gets into a really bad accident and he's gone. Right? Huge blow for the band. Absolutely huge. They decide to, of course, soldier on, finish up the album without him. So the Eat a Peach album has got tracks where Duane appears on, finished tracks where he didn't appear on, where it's just Dickey playing guitars. Okay, they had some other songs played at the Fillmore that they did not use. Okay, on the Fillmore East live album, so they threw them onto the end of Eat a Peach. So all of a sudden, Eat a Peach becomes this gigantic double album, half studio, half live, right? Of course, Mountain Jam, all 30-some-odd minutes of it included in that album. So, and not shortly thereafter, Barry Oakley dies also in a motorcycle accident, also on the same road that took Duane. Just uncanny. This would actually begin, still to this day, would begin a ridiculous, tragic, and horrific string of deaths to the southern rock community that has continued for decades. It's amazing, when you, I'm not going to get into all of them, obviously, but when you go and look at the history of a lot of these bands we're going to talk about today, so many of their former members are no longer with us. It's crazy when you go and do the research on all these bands, how many of them are recently passed or passed a long time ago. Tragically, whether it be, health related or accidents or, strange circumstances. It's absolutely crazy. It's like the southern rock community has been like cursed from the very beginning for some strange reason, right? So anyway, back to the Allman Brothers band. So, they get some new folks into the band. They eventually, they regroup from all the tragedy. They go out, they record Brothers and Sisters, which was a huge hit for the band. But by this time, then you got a lot of egos. Cocaine starts coming into play shortly as we get through the middle of the 70s. Then, Gregg is having all sorts of, personal demons and things like that. Dickey's got his issues. Those two guys are not really getting along, whatever. But Brothers and Sisters, a huge hit for the band, big album for the band. They would release a few more albums throughout the 70s before, everything kind of exploded, and the band basically broke up, and, for many, many years. But they came back together in the late 80s, had a wonderful reunion with some new blood in the band, Warren Haynes and Alan Woody on guitar and bass, respectively. Okay, and all the original members released the Seven Turns album in 1990. Shades of Two Worlds in 1991. They're supercharged, new blood, selling out arenas again. Okay, records are selling well, and they would continue on that way all throughout the 90s and through part of the 2000s. Okay, they stopped recording albums in the early 2000s, but they continued to play live all the time. All right, and eventually, Dickey started to have a lot of personal problems. He was ousted from the band, and as eventually Gregg passed away a few years ago, and that basically signaled the end of the Allman Brothers band, probably forever. But a lot of really, really great music and history there. I mentioned some of the highlight albums, some of their most popular songs, Whipping Post, In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, Melissa, Ramblin' Man, Jessica, more of the recent ones, Seven Turns, Blue Sky, One Way Out, Dreams, so many legendary songs. A truly legendary band that, again, kind of were the initial southern rock act though at the time we weren't really calling them that. At the time, we looked at the Allman Brothers band as just a really good kind of blues rock band with some jazzy, undertones, and a little bit of, especially from Dickey Betts, a lot of his songwriting, a little bit of country, okay? But as time went on, they were kind of looked at as the forefathers of Southern rock. Some other bands from early on, okay? What I've basically done is I've done the first run of Southern rock, which is like 1969 to roughly, early 80s, early mid-80s, 84, thereabouts, and then I'm going to talk about, some of the more recent ones we've had. Another band, Charlie Daniels Band from Wilmington, North Carolina. Okay, Charlie Daniels was actually very active in music throughout the 60s, but it wasn't until around 1971 that he actually put together the Charlie Daniels Band. Some really good, and let me tell you something. Was it last weekend? Last weekend, my wife and I were sitting out by the pool, the last pool weekend of the season, because it's already started to get chilly. We're closing up the pool tomorrow. Leaves are already starting to fall. But we were in the pool all day. We were just hanging out. The sun was out. It was gorgeous weather. We're drinking beers, just enjoying the day. And I decided, for whatever reason, kind of getting ready to do this show. And I hadn't actually gone on a Charlie Daniels Band binge in a while. And I said, and my wife is not really that familiar with the band other than like Devil Went Down to Georgia and a couple other later tunes. So I said, you know what, I'm going to put on a bunch of the old Charlie Daniels CDs and we're going to listen to them out by the pool. And she was like, wow, who is this? And I'm like, it's the old Charlie Daniels Band stuff. She goes, are you serious? She goes, this is great. It's like, it doesn't sound that much different from like the old classic Leonard Skynyrd stuff. I'm like, that is right. And as we're listening to all these albums, I tell you, like I was going to say before, if all you really know from the Charlie Daniels Band is The Devil Went Down to Georgia, man, are you missing out. If you're a fan of like Lynyrd Skynyrd and Marshall Tucker Band and like a lot of those old classic Southern rock acts, you absolutely need to listen to take John Grease and Wolfman from 72, Honey in the Rock, or as it's also known as Easy Rider from 1973, Fire on the Mountain from 74, Night Rider from 75, Saddle Track from 76. Those albums are fucking great. All those albums are filled with ripping, snarling, raunchy Southern rock with the slide guitars and blistering dual lead guitars. Because let me tell you, Charlie Daniels and his partner, I forget, John Crane, I believe his name was, if I remember correctly, in Crime on the guitar, those two guys could jam. And there's a mix on all these albums of, blistering blues rock tunes, and some of it's crankingly heavy. Instrumental stuff, kind of like jazz fusion-y things. If you like it, In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, there's plenty of that kind of stuff on those Charlie Daniels Band albums. Some kind of, rip-snorting old-school country, okay? Some ballads, all right? And some straight blues. And some of the tunes, man, I tell you got the guitars and the fiddle. I'm telling you, if you haven't checked out those early Charlie Daniels Band albums, you absolutely need to. They are phenomenal. Okay, and then later on, obviously, Million Mile Reflections came out in 79 as the 70s was closing out. That was a huge hit for the band. A big, big album, thanks to Devil Went Down to Georgia, but there's a lot of other great tunes on that album. Some good rockin' stuff, a couple good ballads, again, really good album. Full Moon, which came out a year later, also a very strong album, very similar to Million Mile Reflections. They released a couple of their albums after that, which were still pretty popular, but then they kind of, the band kind of splintered, and Charlie just kind of did like the more of the country thing. Most of what Charlie has done in recent years, it's not really that nice out today, became much more country oriented, but that early stuff is definitely Southern rock with an emphasis on rock, I'm telling you. Great stuff. Some of the songs to look out for in the Charlie Daniels Band discography, Uneasy Rider, The South's Gonna Do It Again, which I believe was their first single. Good song. The Devil Went Down to Georgia, obviously. Long-Haired Country Boy. In America, great tune. And The Legend of Woolly Swamp, all right? But a lot of great tunes. I mean, I could have listed a ton of them. I definitely recommend going and checking out the Charlie Daniels Band discography. All right, another band from the same time period, from Spartanburg, South Carolina, starting about 1972 or so, the Marshall Tucker Band. Another really good band, also on Capricorn, who mixed rock and country and a little bit of blues and a little bit of jazz, right? Maybe a little bit of bluegrass at times. Their debut album, Marshall Tucker Band from 73, really good. A New Life from 74, Where We All Belong, 75. Searching for a Rainbow, also from 75. Sorry, Where We All Belong from 74. Searching for a Rainbow from 75. Long Hard Ride, 76. And Carolina Dreams from 77. which I believe was their biggest album. I really hope it doesn't rain. It wasn't supposed to rain today. This is crazy. Getting really windy and the clouds are like... perfect day to be talking about Southern rock, I guess. Carolina Dreams was their really big selling album. Of course, it had their big hit, Heard in a Love Song. Ty Caldwell, great guitar player. Both Caldwell brothers, really, really good musicians. Band is still going on to this day. Okay, Doug Gray on lead vocals, whole new rest of the band. But they kind of mixed, they had flutes and woodwinds along with the guitars, and just really good band. Very rootsy sounding. Can't You See was another early hit from them. Take the Highway, really good song. Heard in a Love Song was their big, massive hit single, like I mentioned. Fire on the Mountain, a great tune. This Old Cowboy, and Searching for a Rainbow. Okay. Another, probably the poster child band for Southern rock, of course, is Lynyrd Skynyrd. All right, so Lynyrd Skynyrd got their start roughly in 1969 with the name anyway, but they, had various names before then. Still active to this day, although they are on their kind of retirement tour right now, their final tour, which is seemingly going on forever. All right, so Lynyrd Skynyrd, a band that kind of made the dual guitar and eventually the triple guitar army kind of famous in Southern rock. They kind of started it all. But Skynyrd just became, for the entire universe, like the guys next door who, could play the shit out of their instruments, and their songs were great, right? They were just, for lack of a better term, they were a bunch of rednecks, okay, who could play rock and roll. They loved all the British blues rock bands, okay? They loved the, the blues from down south. They loved country, okay? They took all these influences and created their sound. Their first album, pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd, from 1973. Classic album. So many great songs on it. Second Helping from 74. Nothing Fancy from 75. Give Me Back My Bullets from 76. Street Survivors 77. One More from the Road, the live album from 76. Like I said, they're still, we'll get into a little bit of history here too, but Vicious Cycle from 2003 was a big seller. God and Guns from 2009. They continued doing all sorts of studio albums all throughout their career, all right? Some of their highlight songs, of course, everybody knows these. Free Bird, Simple Man, Sweet Home Alabama, Tuesday's Gone, Gimme 3 Steps, Saturday Night Special, Working for MCA, That Smell, Give Me Back My Bullets, What's Your Name, I Know a Little, Red, White, and Blue, Smokestack Lightning, Traveling Man, Simple Life, and Still Unbroken, okay? A lot of old and new tunes, all right? So I might as well get into a little bit of Skynyrd history there. So, before we talk about a lot of the other bands from this decade, so in 1977, and specifically on October 20th, 1977, Skynyrd were on tour on a little, small passenger plane. What they were doing is they were taking a little plane from gig to gig, and they were on their way to play a show in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and they were flying over Gillsburg, Mississippi, or just outside of Gillsburg, Mississippi, when their plane ran out of fuel, okay, and they had to emergency crash land in kind of like a swamp area. And unfortunately, in the crash, lead singer Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines and Cassie Gaines, Steve Gaines, their brand new co-lead guitar player, and Cassie Gaines, his sister who was doing backing vocals, killed in the plane crash. Assistant road manager Dean Kilpatrick and both the pilot and co-pilot all killed in the crash. Rest of the members of the band survived with extensive injuries, okay? So, Gary Rossington and Alan Collins and Billy Powell and, Leon Wilkerson and all those guys, all right? Basically, really bad injuries, a lot of recovery time, and that basically signaled the end of the band. But, more importantly, well, not more importantly, but the loss and the tragedy of what happened that day was felt throughout the rock and roll community, but specifically in the Southern rock community. I think one of the things that I always found so kind of just amazing about Southern rock was that kind of camaraderie amongst all the bands. Okay, it didn't matter whether you were from Florida or Georgia or Tennessee or Mississippi or Kentucky or one of the Carolinas. It didn't matter. They were all really tight, and they really cared about each other. And it's just amazing how, despite all the tragedy that happened with Skynyrd, all the other bands kind of banded together, and it just made made them want to continue on and make even greater music. And they would be mentioning Skynyrd in song lyrics and things like that. And it made Southern rock stronger, oddly enough. And a lot of the bands that maybe hadn't yet been signed, okay, to major labels yet in the wake of the plane crash, were getting signed and going out there and kind of continuing on in the spirit of Skynyrd. Okay, and we're going to talk about some of them momentarily, but I want to get to some of that. I wanted to kind of throw that little bit of history there, because that's probably one of the key moments in the history of Southern rock, as tragic as it is. And the sad thing is, there's so much tragedy in the history of Southern rock, so much, like I mentioned at the top of the show. All right, other bands of the genre, okay? Got to include ZZ Top here, right? A little band from Houston, Texas, all right? Also been around now 50 years with the same lineup, all right? Albums like ZZ Top's first album in 71, Rio Grande Mud, 72, Tres Hombres, 73, Fandango, 75, Tejas, 76, Degeo, 79, their huge album Eliminator in 83, Afterburner in 85, huge albums, right? The change in sound for them, but still big albums. Their early albums, just kick ass, Texas-style blues rock. Francine, LaGrange, Tush, Brown Sugar, Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, Jesus Just Left Chicago, Waiting for the Bus, Just Got Paid, I Thank You, I'm Bad, I'm Nationwide, Baby, Cheap Sunglasses, Give Me All Your Lovin', Leg, Sharp Dressed Man, Sleeping Bag, and Rough Boy. A huge band, and a band that's just been around forever. They just never went away, right? Who else? Atlanta Rhythm Section from Doraville, Georgia, 1970, still present to this day. All right, a little bit of a different band, not as hard rocking as some of their contemporaries. All right, ARS, as they're also called, had much more of a laid back kind of pop sound, yet they still had a good handful of songs that kind of really rocked and kick ass, but they wrote a lot of really great melodic songs with tasty guitars and really good rhythms and great vocal harmonies. Third Annual Pipe Dream from 74, great album. Dog Days from 75. Red Tape from 76. A Rock and Roll Alternative, also from 76. Their big hit album, Champagne Jam from 78. Killer album. Underdog from 79. Their live album, Are You Ready from 79. Great live album. Quinella from 81. Okay, some of their big hits. Doraville, So Into You, Champagne Jam, I'm Not Gonna Let It Bother Me Tonight, Imaginary Lover, Spooky, Jukin', Do It or Die. A lot of great tunes. Great band. Who else? Wet Willie from Mobile, Alabama, 1970. Still playing to this day. Another Southern rock band that really was playing something different. Wet Willie more doing kind of like a rhythm and blues funky thing. All right? Got some horns and reeds and, groovy rhythms, right? Less on the crazy guitar solos and lengthy guitar solos, more on these kind of tight, rhythmic jams and things. Okay, a couple great live albums too. Drippin' Live, 73. You got the Keep On Smiling album, studio album from 74. Dixie Rock from 75. Another great live album, Left Coast Live from 76. The Wetter the Better, also from 76. And Mannerisms from 77. A lot of really strong albums. Keep On Smiling was a big hit for them. Countryside Alive, Street Corner Serenade, Weekend, Leona, Dixie Rock, Everything That You Do, Baby Fat, great groovy song. Shame, 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 Ring You Up, and Jelly Jelly. Another really, really underrated band. How about from Black Oak, Arkansas? Black Oak, Arkansas, right? Also getting their start in the early 70s, 1971. Still playing to this day. I saw them a couple years ago. Really different band, just kind of really rootsy. Again, they usually had 2 or 3 guitar players. You had Big Jim Dandy Mangrum on lead vocals. Got the nasaliest, most redneck vocal style you'll ever want to hear. But it made them unique, right? He had a stage presence. He had the washboard, right? They had the look. They were just so different. Their self-titled debut in 71, Keep the Faith, 72. If an Angel Came to See You, Would You Make Her Feel at Home from 72. Raunch and Roll Live from 72, great live album. High on the Hog, that was their big seller album, 73. Street Party from 74. X-Rated from 75, all right? Some of their songs, Uncle Elijah, Hot and Nasty, When Electricity Came to Arkansas, Mutants of the Monster, great tune, and Jim Dandy. Okay, Very interesting band. They're kind of like a love it or hate it thing with a lot of people. Some people just can't get past his vocals. And I got to be in the mood to listen to them because he's just got this whole kind of, southern thing going on, but it's like real nasally. But, it's definitely unique. All right. How about from Tampa, Florida? These guys have been around since the late 60s, right? They're still playing today, although, most of the original members are long since gone. Outlaws, all right? Or the Outlaws. Their self-titled debut in 75. Again, a lot of country influences, but also they could do that, like, multiple guitar army shred thing, okay? So it kind of did a little bit of both, right? And they had pop hooks, okay? A lot of jams. Country sound, rock sound, all, a little blues, a little jazz. Outlaws from 75, all right. Lady in Waiting from 76. Their excellent Hurry Sundown from 77 might be my favorite album by them. Their killer live album, double live album, Playing to Win. I mean, there's like guitar solos running amok on that album. Playing to Win was a studio album. Bring It Back Alive is the live album from 78. Playing to Win is a studio album, also from the same year. In the Eye of the Storm from 79, a little bit of a heavier rock style there. Ghost Riders, okay, from 1980. My first Outlaws purchase, okay. A great studio album. They had a big hit with that Ghost Riders in the Sky cover, right? Some of their hit songs, There Goes Another Love Song, was their massive hit early on from the first album. Hurry Sundown, title track from that album. Ghost Riders in the Sky, Greengrass and High Tides, all right, which is their kind of answer to Freebird, okay, with the lengthy guitar solos at the end. Holliday, great poppy tune. Stick Around for Rock and Roll, Loverboy, and Prisoner. A lot of great Outlaws tunes. And Henry Paul would be in the original lineup of the bands as one of their singers. Him and Huey Thomason would be a co-lead vocalist. He would leave the band for a number of years and then come back and then leave again, and he's now fronting the band once again. Again, with most of the other classic members have long since passed away. What else we got here? How about also from Florida? How about from Jacksonville, Florida? Started around 1974, still playing to this day. 38 Special, closely tied to Leonard Skynyrd, of course. The Van Zant brothers all throughout, playing in different bands in southern rock. These guys had major success in the early 80s. Okay, they started in the late 70s with a very Skynyrdish sound, but then they started to get a lot of songs played on the radio. They became a really big radio band. All right, a lot of big FM radio hits. Okay, their album Rockin' Into the Night in 78. Wild-Eyed Southern Boys in 81, huge hit for the band. Special Forces in 82, enormous seller. Okay, Tour de Force in 83, also a big seller. Great vocal harmonies. Again, they had a couple of different singers in the band. Killer guitar playing, all right? Rockin' Into the Night, Stone Cold Believer, Hold On Loosely, Fantasy Girl, Wild-Eyed Southern Boys, Caught Up in You, Chain Lightning, Back Where You Belong, Backdoor Stranger, You Keep Running Away, and there's more, right? Hits galore from 38 Special. All right, also from Jacksonville, Florida. I mentioned those kind of bands that were around back in the days when Skynyrd were really popular. But then when the plane crash came, all of a sudden they started popping up and getting signed. How about Molly Hatchet, all right, who were actually playing, the club circuit back in the early mid-70s. Well, in 1978, they get signed. I believe it was Epic Records, I believe. That first album, the Frank Frazetta album cover, great stuff. So, then they're Flirting with Disaster in 79, a big seller for them. Both their first two albums, their first three actually, sold really well. Beating the Odds in 1980. Danny Joe Brown, their singer on the first two albums, he leaves. He's replaced by Jimmy Farrar for two albums. He sings on Beating the Odds and Take No Prisoners 1 year later in 81. Danny comes back into the band, right, for the No Guts, No Glory album in 83. All right, they released Double Trouble Live in 85. And again, another band, the Three Guitar Army, right? I would say Molly Hatchet, one of those kind of, when you talk about some of the heavier bands of southern rock, definitely them. They took kind of like that Skynyrd formula, kicked it up a notch, all right? Pretty rockin' songs like Gator Country, The Creeper, Bounty Hunter, Whiskey Man, Flirt with Disaster, huge hit for them. Boogie No More, Beating the Odds, The Rambler, Dead and Gone, Bloody Reunion, Fall of the Peacemakers. Some great stuff. And Molly Hatchet, another one of those bands still continuing on today with no original members in the band. Okay, and Molly Hatchet has had a lot of deaths in their family over the years. It's just ridiculous how many. I think, if I'm not mistaken, all of the original band are gone. So, which, if I'm not mistaken, or there might be one left, but or that whole original lineup, man, it's terrible. Also from Jacksonville, Florida, another band with ties to Skynyrd, because in the very, very first incarnation of Lynyrd Skynyrd, their original drummer was a guy named Ricky Medlock, okay, who left the band before they, went and recorded that first official album, all right, and he went on to then switch over to guitar and create a band called Blackfoot, okay, who had a string of albums in the early mid-'70s, but they really started to hit their stride in '79 with Strikes, in '80 with Tom Catton, '81 with Marauder, and '83 with Siago, okay? And Blackfoot actually even took that kind of that heavy style of Skynyrd and Molly Hatchet even further with more metallic guitars. I think Blackfoot really were listening to a lot of the kind of new wave of British heavy metal bands and kind of incorporating more of like a metal sound into their brand of southern rock. Songs like Road Fever, Highway Song, Train Train, On the Run, Gimme Gimme Gimme, Every Man Should Know, Queenie, Good Morning, Paying for It, Diary of a Working Man, Too Hard to Handle, Fire the Dragon, Crossfire, and Teenage Idol. I mean, that Marauder album is seriously heavy stuff, folks. Check it out. What else we got? How about from Warner Robins, Georgia, starting off in 1973, and they kind of broke up and got back together, broke up and got back together many, many times. Grinder Switch never really achieved the fame of a lot of the other bands that we've talked about, but they had a couple decent selling albums like Honest to Goodness in '74, Making Tracks in '75, and Pulling Together in '76. Some might remember their song Pickin' the Blues, as well as Roll On Gambler. Decent band. Just not quite, their material, for me anyway, not quite memorable enough. But if you're into southern rock, can't not like it, right? But never quite really got there compared to some of their contemporaries. Sea Level, all right, from Macon, Georgia. They were around from '76 to '81. Basically, some of the members of the Allman Brothers band when the Allmans kind of split up in the late '70s. Okay, so you had, Lamar Williams on bass, J-Mo, of course, drums, and Chuck Leavell on keyboards, all from the Allmans, who went to form a mostly instrumental, but they had vocals too, kind of like a southern rock / jazz fusion band. And they brought in all sorts of other musicians from other bands, okay, to round out the lineup. Some really good material. They had a couple albums that sold pretty well, like their self-titled debut from '77. Cats on the Coast, also released that year. On the Edge from '78. They released a couple other ones. Those were on Capricorn. They, I think, went to Atco, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Atco, was it Atco? I don't remember. They went to another major label. But they had, songs like That's Your Secret, Storm Warning, Living in a Dream. Very good band. Some really tasty stuff. If you like jazz fusion and would like to hear what jazz fusion sounds like with a little bit of southern rock kind of thrown in, definitely check out Sea Level. All right. How about Rossington Collins Band, also from Jacksonville, Florida, active from '79 to '82. So after the plane crash, okay, many of the surviving members of Lynyrd Skynyrd wanted to kind of get back to music again. However, they did not want to go and recreate Lynyrd Skynyrd. So what Gary Rossington and Alan Collins and Billy Powell and Leon Wilkeson did is they put together this band called the Rossington Collins Band. They wanted to do something a little bit differently, so they brought in female singer Dale Krantz, who eventually wound up marrying guitarist Gary Rossington, along with Barry Lee Harwood on guitar and Derek Hess on drums. Okay, and their first album, Anytime, Anyplace, Anywhere, actually was a very big hit. I think the world was starving for more Lynyrd Skynyrd, and this was like the closest thing you were going to get. And that debut album is really good. A lot of really good tunes on there. Again, it's more song-based. Not that Skynyrd wasn't song-based, but less relying on a lot of guitar solos, and it wasn't as rockin' as those Skynyrd albums, but really, really good music. So that was their first album. They've released one more album, This Is the Way, in '81. That was it for the band. But Prime Time, 3 Times as Bad, Don't Misunderstand Me was the big hit off that album. Misery Loves Company. The first album is chock full of really, really strong songs. What else we got here? How about the Johnny Van Zant Band? Okay, so the younger brother of Ronnie also got himself into music, right? The rest of his band from Jacksonville, Florida. He had the Johnny Van Zant band and then just Van Zant, right? But they released a bunch of albums like in the early mid '80s and early '90s. And Johnny basically, before he took over and fronted Lynyrd Skynyrd for many, many years, still to this day, he was doing kind of the Johnny Van Zant band thing. So he had No More Dirty Deals in 1980, Round 2 in 81, Last of the Wild Ones in 82 under the Johnny Van Zant band name, and those are very strong. I like those a lot. You had the Van Zant album in 85, and then in 1990 you had Brickyard Road, which is basically like a Johnny Van Zant solo album. Very, very strong. Okay. Highlight songs: Brickyard Road, Only the Strong Survive, Stand Your Ground, Danger Zone, Last of the Wild Ones, Shot Down, and Cold-Hearted Woman. I originally saw the Johnny Van Zant band open up for Black Sabbath on the Mob Rules tour. And, the poor guys, they got booed off the stage after like 20 minutes. And I just never thought about them again until like a few years back. And, I've been a huge Southern rock fan my whole life, and I have so many Southern rock albums on CD, and I'm like, God, I don't own any Johnny Van Zant stuff. And I went and bought all those, and I'm glad I did, because they're really, really good and well worth your time. And I'm glad I finally broke down and got them. What else we got here? How about Hydra from Atlanta, Georgia? All right. They were active from like 71 to 77. Another cool, like kind of, they were also on Capricorn. Another cool kind of Southern rock band. They had some hard rock influences. They released their self-titled debut in 74, Land of Money in 75, Rock the World in 77, and then kind of we never heard from them again, right? Glitter Queen, really good tune from them. It's So Hard, Miriam, Land of Money, Little Miss Rock and Roll is a great tune, and The Pistol is really good. Very good, kind of underrated, unknown band with great album covers too. How about Doc Holliday? All right, from Macon, Georgia. Okay, they started up in 1981. They're still in certain configurations today. I think the only original member of the band today is their keyboard player, if I'm not mistaken. But another really good band that kind of probably should have been bigger. But it may have been just a couple years too late. So their first album came out in 81, got a lot of attention. They toured with Black Sabbath and a lot of the other like heavier bands of the day. Maybe not a good fit, although they were pretty rocking. Those first two Doc Holliday albums are really good. Doc Holliday self-titled and Doc Holliday Rides Again in 1981. Signed to a major label, slick production, blistering guitar work, a lot of good rockin' tunes, memorable songs. Lonesome Guitar was their kind of trademark song. Again, their kind of Freebird. Last Ride, Keep on Running, Magic Midnight. A lot of really good tunes. I really dig. I got a bunch of the Doc Holliday albums, but they really would start to change their sound a little bit after those first two albums towards more of like kind of like mid-'80s kind of, poppy, cheesy, synthy type stuff with a little bit of Southern rock. But those first two albums, damn good. I highly recommend them. What else? How about the Henry Paul Band? All right. So like I mentioned, Henry left the Outlaws for a number of years and started up his own band, which, quite frankly, didn't sound a hell of a lot different from the Outlaws. They had their album Grey Ghost in 79, Feel the Heat in 1980, and Anytime in 1981. That band was active from 79 to 83. Especially those first two albums, Grey Ghost and Feel the Heat, damn good. If you like the early Outlaws stuff, again, the dueling twin guitars, right? The great vocal harmonies, the mix of kind of like rock and country, right? Grey Ghost, So Long, Crossfire, Whiskey Talkin', Running Away, Long Shot, Keeping Our Love Alive, a lot of really great tunes. I like those Henry Paul Band albums quite a bit. How about from Irving, Texas? Started in 1974. They're still around in some configuration. Point Blank. Okay? Point Blank, a lot of these bands from Texas kind of took that ZZ Top route. They're really heavy, kind of bluesy rock. All right? Point Blank, that first album in 76 kicks ass. Second Season from 77 also kills. Airplay from 79, kind of starting to mellow out a little bit. Throw in some more hooks and radio hooks. All right, The Hard Way in 80s got some blistering tunes on it. American Excess from 81, really good albums. Point Blank, a very underrated band. Free Man, Moving, Wandering, Stars and Scars, Back in the Alley, and of course they had that one big hit, Nicole. All right, which they probably could have played off of, and they never really did. I'm just wondering, by the time I think that Point Blank was really starting to get popular, the whole Southern rock thing was kind of fizzling out for a while. I think Southern rock had that like kind of, like 1973, 74 till about like 81, 82. That was kind of like the window. Then it started to kind of drop off a little bit. Another band started out late 60s, went up to the end of the 70s. Pot Liquor from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. All right. First Taste from 1970. Levee Blues from 71. Louisiana Rock and Roll from 73. And Pot Liquor from 79. Another really good, kind of unknown band. Those albums are very strong. A lot of cool mix of stuff. You got some country, got some rootsy stuff, some swamp blues, some good, ripping southern rock, and some heavy rock at times. Riverboat, You're No Good, Cheer, Levee Blues, Waiting for Me at the River, some of the more notable tunes, but there's a lot of them. From Jacksonville, North Carolina, also got their start in '69, but didn't start releasing actual albums. Didn't get signed till late in the '70s. Nantucket. Okay, another really cool band. A lot of these great, second and third tier southern rock bands that are just, had some really great material. Their self-titled debut, 1978. Your Face or Mine from '79. Long Way to the Top from '80. That was their kind of homage to the, fallen Bon Scott from Lynyrd Skynyrd, from AC/DC. All right. Some of their notable songs: Time Bomb, Turn the Radio On, Give Me Your Love, California, Heartbreaker, and She's No Good. Another really good band. From Warner Robins, Georgia. They were active from '73 till just, late '90s. Stillwater. Okay, they released 2 albums. I believe they were signed to a major label. Stillwater in '77, and I Reserve the Right in '78. Some songs to investigate might be Mindbender and I Reserve the Right. Good stuff. I only just got those a couple of years ago. I had never had them before. Dickey Betts, of course, when he wasn't playing in the Allman Brothers band, had his band Great Southern. Okay, they released Dickey Betts and Great Southern in '77. Atlanta's Burning Down in '78. Very similar to the stuff he was doing on the the mid '70s Allman Brothers band material. Kind of country-ish, but with great guitar jams. Sweet Virginia, Out to Get Me, Bougainvillea, Good Time Feeling. A lot pretty strong albums. Those Dickey Betts albums. From spring, I'm going to name a couple bands that not really southern, because they're not really from the South. They're close, but a lot of people call them, possibly southern rock bands or country rock bands. The Ozark Mountain Daredevils from Springfield, Missouri. They've been around since '71. They had the Ozark Mountain Daredevils in '73. It'll Shine When It Shines in '74. The Car Over the Lake album in '75. And Men from Earth in '76. Of course, they had that huge hit Jackie Blue, all right, which is a great tune. If You Want to Get to Heaven, another really popular song from them, and You Know Like I Know as well. I have a Ozark Mountain Daredevils greatest hits set, and it's more country rock than southern rock, but I know a lot of people kind of lump some of these bands in with some of these other, another band from St. Louis, Missouri from 1972. They're still together in some configuration until today. Mama's Pride. That's some pretty good stuff. That's pretty damn close to southern rock, in my opinion. They had the self-titled debut in '75, Uptown and Downtown in '76. Who else we got here? Two Guns from Lawton, Oklahoma. Okay, they were only around for about a year, but they released one album on Capricorn called Balls Out in '79. That's damn good. That's really good kind of dual guitar, tasty southern rock. I highly recommend that. That was also, like I said, on Capricorn. I just also tracked that one down a couple years ago. Black Horse from Dallas, Texas. All right, only around for a couple years from '79 to '81. They had their self-titled debut in '79. That's also great if you love Point Blank and ZZ Top. These guys, not really southern rock at all, but they were probably the only non-southern rock band on Capricorn Records. I'm talking about White Witch from Tampa, Florida, who were around for a couple of years from '71 to '75. They released 2 albums for the label. I have their first one on CD. It's really different. It's more kind of like a cult rock, right? Not really southern rock at all. Kind of a weird mix there, but hey, they were on Capricorn, so I figured I'd mention them. Who else? Artimus Pyle Band from Louisville, Kentucky. Of course, Artimus, one of the surviving members of the Lynyrd Skynyrd plane crash, who was actually supposed to be in the Rossington Collins band. but he did not take part because I think he broke his leg or something. He had some kind of injury, and they were ready to go, and he obviously was not ready, so they went on without him, started the band up. But he also had the Artimus Pyle band in '81. It's a really good debut. Nightcrawler in 1983, and he's got the Artimus Pyle band plays live all over the place today. I'm not sure if they recorded any new material in quite a number of years, but they basically go and do the Lynyrd Skynyrd show, and I've seen Artimus Pyle and his band numerous times here locally, and they're awesome. They play all the Skynyrd classics. They sound fantastic. Who else? Am I forgetting anybody? How about the Gregg Allman band? All right. Gregg had like a solo band, periodically throughout his career. Mainly, he had a couple albums in the 70s, and he had the Gregg Allman band going up until his death, right, a couple years ago. But he had the album Laid Back in 1973, Playing Up a Storm in 77, I'm No Angel, the big hit album for him in 1987. That's when the Allmans were basically not doing much of anything. Just Before the Bullets Fly in 88, that was his last solo album before the reunion of Allman Brothers band. And then in 2011, Low Country Blues, and 2017, his last album, Southern Blood. And sadly, we lost Gregg not too long ago. So that's basically the old guard, right? But we've got a lot of newer bands who have kind of come out, post 1985, who have made a mark on the southern rock scene, although maybe the general public doesn't always look at them as southern rock bands per se. You got the Georgia Satellites who were kind of selling some records and had some hits in the late 80s. They had their self-titled debut in 86, Open All Night in 87. Everybody remembers their huge hit, Keep Your Hands to Yourself. Don't give me no lies and keep your hands to yourself. Everybody's heard that song. That was a really big hit for them. The Black Crowes from Marietta, Georgia. Okay. Started up in 89, basically were an active band till about 2015. The two Robinson brothers just don't get along. It's like the American version of Ray and Dave Davies all over again, right? But they made it big in 1990 with Shake Your Moneymaker. Okay, the Southern Harmony Musical Companion in 92 was a huge seller. Amorica in 94, also a really big seller. A lot of hit singles. Jealous Again, Hard to Handle, Twice as Hard, She Talks to Angels, Seeing Things, Remedy, Sting Me, A Conspiracy, all big radio hits and concert favorites. Government Mule from Asheville, North Carolina, kind of started up in 1994. Of course, that was the band, you had Warren Haynes and Alan Woody, from the Allman Brothers band, decided they wanted to start up a side project, kind of like a hard rock band in the vein of, like, say, Free, that type of thing. They got Matt Apps on drums and created, like, the Ultimate Power Trio. All right, their self-titled debut came out in 1995, Dose in 98, Life Before Insanity in 2000. We lost Alan Woody, back a ways, but the band has continued on. Basically, as a 4 or 5 piece over the years, released a lot of albums. They're very active. Warren kind of went back and forth between Allmans and Government Mule for quite a while. And then just did the Government Mule thing, and then went back to the Allman Brothers, and then the Allman Brothers, obviously, after Gregg passed away, are no more, so he does basically Government Mule full-time, also with a solo act as well. But Government Mule, the jam scene loves them. A lot of these southern rock bands have become very popular on the jam scene, okay? Jam is basically kind of like this kind of music with a lot of improvisation and long solos. Just think of jam as kind of like the bastard child of prog rock, southern rock. If prog rock, southern rock, and psych rock got together, had an affair, and had a child, there you have jam, I guess, kind of. All right, so Government Mule, kind of like, the hard rockers love Government Mule, the southern rock folks love Government Mule, and the jam crowd loves Government Mule. Widespread Panic is another band from Athens, Georgia. They've been around since like 86, still playing to this day. Some of their big albums are Space Wrangler from 88, Widespread Panic from 91, Everyday from 93, Bombs and Butterflies was kind of their big breakthrough hit from 97, Light Fuse Getaway from 98 is their killer double live album. Jimmy Herring on lead guitar in that band, who's just fantastic. Some other bands. Whiskey Meyers from Tyler, Texas. They've been around since about 2007. Royal Southern Brotherhood from New Orleans, Louisiana. Got together around 2011. That's kind of like an all-star mix of folks from the southern rock scene getting together to play, original music. Preacher Stone from Charlotte, North Carolina, been around since 2008. 1,000 Horses from Nashville, Tennessee, 2010 to the present. Very good band. The Cadillac 3, also from Nashville, from 2011 and on. Very strong band. Blackberry Smoke from Atlanta, Georgia, who got their start in around 2000. They're probably the most popular of the current wave of southern rock bands. Again, they incorporate elements of country and rock in their sound and blues. Great instrumentalist, right? But their music is very accessible. I think a lot of the modern country fans dig Blackberry Smoke as well as 1,000 Horses, Cadillac 3, a lot of Whiskey Meyers. A lot of these bands appeal to both crowds, right? Because a lot of the modern country bands are not much different than what we know as southern rock, right? Blackstone Cherry from Edmonton, Kentucky, been around since 2001. They are probably the heaviest of the new wave of southern rock. Okay, if I would, I hear a lot of kind of Blackfoot in Blackstone Cherry. Okay, but also a little bit of Soundgarden and alternative rock as well. Drive-By Truckers from Athens, Georgia, been around since the mid-90s. Tedeschi Trucks Band, okay, from Jacksonville, Florida, from 2010 and on. That's basically Derek Trucks, ex of the Allman Brothers Band and also the Derek Trucks Band, and his wife Susan Tedeschi got together. They do this kind of, it's almost like the modern take on the Delaney and Bonnie Band. A little rhythm and blues, a little bit of folk, a little pop, okay, little jazz, lots of jam, that sort of thing, laid back, a lot of vocal hooks, I mentioned the Derek Trucks Band. He had that going for a number of years. That was a great band. It's a shame he ended that. And then one of the more recent ones that you should check out is the Marcus King Band from Greenville, South Carolina. They started in about 2015. Marcus King is a terrific young guitar player. In fact, Warren Haynes kind of took him under his wing, right? And you can see a lot of similarities in some of the early music of the Marcus King Band, but their most recent album is very accessible, very commercial. Got a full, bunch of horns and, very kind of springy, summery type of music, right? With a lot of hooks, a lot of pop, but some sizzling guitar, a lot of great instrumentation. So there you have it. That is basically my history in a nutshell of southern rock. You could obviously go more in depth on a lot of these bands, but I wanted to kind of give an overview of the, kind of how this genre came about, how it survived all through the years, what it started as, what it's morphed into, talk about some of the, the tragedy that's happened. And like I said, if you do a Google search on the deaths in the southern rock family over the years, you'd be amazed. It's crazy how many we've lost from the old classic bands. But more importantly, there's a lot of great music out there, so many great bands, and I'm sure I'm probably missing a few, but those are some of the more notable ones that if you don't have a lot of experience with southern rock beyond Skynyrd and 38 Special and the Allman Brothers Band and a couple others, there's definitely some stuff there that you should check out. So man, my hair is all a whack today. It's this wind. So plus I got to trim this morning, and I got to redo it. But anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, I know a lot of you have been asking for more history of shows. Just understand there's a lot of work that goes into these, and if I do more history of shows, everything else is going to suffer because that will take up all of my time. So I might maybe later. I know Chris Allen and I have talked about doing the Iron Maiden one, and I got a few more on my list, so I'm going to try and get to them when I can. But that may more, what I may do is once I get through all this kind of classic live album war shows, that's going to be for the next couple months, I may take a break on those for a while and just kind of concentrate on a handful of history of shows. Certain bands or certain genres or whatever, so we'll see how it goes. But this was fun. I actually enjoyed kind of putting this one together and delivering it to you today because I'm a big fan, and I like talking about all these groups because they mean a lot. A lot of them mean a lot to me, and a lot of these albums I dig quite a bit. So I hope you enjoyed it. Visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube very, very often. So we'll see you in the morning with another classic album war, but in the meantime, go out and investigate a lot of these southern rock albums if you haven't heard them, or listen to some of the songs, see if they grab you. That's why I figure I'd list a lot of songs for you to check out. This way you can just go and say, ooh, this is for me or this isn't for me, that sort of thing. So anyway, enjoy. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.